Hello, hello, hello. You are very welcome to the Workplace Trauma and Resilient Leadership Initiative powered by the Live Again Foundation. And the reason for this is to really help employees step into their power, help them recover themselves, and provide for them the tools that they need to bounce back as lively employees who are productive but not losing themselves. Today, I am excited to welcome a lawyer to this conversation. And the reason that we're doing this is because employees actually need to know their rights and understand what protection exists for them legally, to be able to understand what their rights are, what they are able to get, or what is obtainable. And if someone is abusing you in the workplace or the policies are stripping you of your rights, you need to know what to do. You need to be empowered to act accordingly. You need to know how not to settle for things that belittle you, things that rob you of your identity and your humanness. And so I'm excited to welcome Aderinsola Fagbure. She is the principal partner of In Black and White Legal Practitioners. And I'm going to be bringing her upstage right about now. I want to know if you're in the room. If you're in the room, please let us know. If you're around, please let us know so that we can welcome you specially. Okay, I am trying to bring you up to the stream. All right, I think you're here now. Hello, hello. Hi, Darren. Welcome. Can you
Hi,
hear me?
Nifome. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Hi, Nifome. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You're very, very welcome. So, welcome. And you have the floor. I'm going to get off the stream. So, you're going to really just speak and teach from what you've prepared for us. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, and thank you for considering this topic something to be worthy to be talked about because many people don't think of it as an issue when you're talking about workplace trauma. So, thank you for
Mm.
having me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
Thank you for being here. So, I'm going to get off the stage so that you can
Okay,
have the floor.
that's fine.
Take it away.
Okay, so the topic today is legal protection for employees, and we're just going to start from the word legal because that's the key word in the topic. And many people shy away from that word because once you hear legal, it seems like you're bringing about some kind of trouble or there's has to be a lawyer. And people would say, you hear some people say, I've never had any trouble in my life. I don't want to engage with a lawyer. I don't want to have any legal matters. I don't want to go to court. But it's important that as we navigate through life, we understand our rights at every stage of life. Even from the moment a child is born, that child is born into this world with certain rights that are guaranteed by the constitution of every nation. And as we grow older and we go into the workplace, we enter into other institutions like family, marriage, there are a number of also other rights that individuals are entitled to. And so, first things first, I want everybody on this stream to disabuse themselves from the fact that I don't need to know my rights, or I don't have any business with the law, I don't have any business with the lawyer, or I've never had a lawyer in my life. It's just like saying you've never had a doctor. A doctor is not there because you have to have surgery or you're sick. We ask for medical advice to prevent terminal illnesses and major illnesses. So also everybody should have the benefit of some legal advice, be able to ask questions from a lawyer who's educated, who's trained, who has some form of specialization in the area of law that you want to learn more about. And prevention is always better than getting into a disastrous situation where you have to go helter skelter to find a solution. And so that's why I'm excited to talk about this. And I hope that this information that's gathered here today would help people to navigate their workplace experience and to be able to understand their rights in the workplace. So in Nigeria, generally, the rights of every any person working in an organization is covered generally by the Labor Act. The Labor Act draws its legitimacy from the Nigerian Constitution because every human being, according to the Constitution, has fundamental human rights. And one of the fundamental human rights that translates into the rights that are guaranteed by the Labor Act is the right to human dignity. Everybody working in an organization constitutionally, irrespective of what the workplace policies are, irrespective of the prevailing labor laws, irrespective of what your employee manual or handbook says, you have a right to liberty, personal liberty. You have a right to enjoy your space. You have a right to have control over what happens to your body, what you use your body to. That's his personal liberty. Nobody has a right to sexually assault you, which borders on personal liberty. And so, as I said, the Nigerian Labour Act derives its legitimacy from the Nigerian Constitution. And fundamentally, every employee is expected to, according to the Labour Act, have a letter of employment. Within 6 months of engagement, you are expected to be issued a letter of employment. I find it unimaginable, but we found in practice, we've seen instances where people don't even have employment letters. They don't even know what is inside their employment letters. Some people just collect their employment letters, flash through to the point where they see the salary column and know, okay, I know what my salary is, but they don't even know whether there are any hidden clauses in the employment contract. And if you have an employment contract that has illegal clauses that do not align with your fundamental human rights and the provisions of the Labor Act, you are allowed to kick against them. There are legitimate routes to do so. So it's not about going to shout down your employer. And the employer-employee relationship is not one where the employer is supposed to load it over the employee. So if you find out that if there's anybody here who has an employment letter or hasn't read through it, it's important to go back, read through it, know what your expectations of the job are, know what your employees so the employment contract pretty much gives the rights and responsibilities of both parties, the employer on one side and the employee on another side. So it's important for you to know, what are my expectations as an employee? I don't know if there are employers on this call, but what are my expectations as an employer as well? What is my leave allowance? What am I expected? How many days am I expected? Because it's important to have these things documented. So somebody is not thinking, I'm allowed 3 months maternity, but leave. And the employer thinks, oh, you're only allowed 1 month maternity leave. This thing should be clearly and explicitly stated. Um, and I also mentioned at the beginning of the live stream that the Constitution governs a number of rights that individuals have. Also, in Nigeria, unfortunately, our Labor Act does not expressly talk about sexual harassment, because this is one of the fundamental things that employees may face in a workplace. There might be instances of sexual harassment. The labor law doesn't at the moment talk about that explicitly, but in Nigeria, because I'm talking from the Nigerian perspective and using Nigeria as the jurisdiction of the case study today, in Nigeria, sexual harassment of whatever form has been criminalized. There's a Violence Against People's Prohibition Act, which clearly criminalizes sexual offenses. In Lagos State, particularly, the Lagos State Criminal Code, the Lagos State Criminal Act also frowns against sexual harassment and criminalizes it, which means if you are a victim of sexual harassment in the workplace, it's important for you to, first of all, mention it to. So, in terms of legal protection, there are internal legal protection mechanisms and there are external legal protection mechanisms. The internal legal protection mechanisms are the mechanisms that the organization itself has put in place. So some organizations have within the entity, they have a human resource personnel, they have this, they might even be like a counselor in the office, there might even be a mentor in the office. So whatever internal mechanisms have been put in place in the organization you work. It's important for you to be aware of them. Some offices have whistleblower protection mechanisms where you'll be protected if you bring it to the awareness of the management or the board or the senior management, the on 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 ethical things that are going on within the organization. So every employee needs to know, what are the options available for me within my organization? Is there a whistleblower mechanism? Am I going to be protected if I bring it to the fore that this is what is happening? Some organizations have a mentorship relationship where um, senior management mentors junior management, and each person in an organization is assigned a mentor. If you have this system, know who you can talk to. The human resources department is also supposed to serve as a bridge or a kind of bridge between the employers and the employees. So how responsive is your human resources question to on the live stream? Do you have a human resources department that is approachable? Do you have people in the human resources team that are approachable, or are they going to just dismiss things that are brought to their fore? That is very important, because at every stage, the workplace is supposed to be a safe environment. You don't want workers coming to the office and they're having palpitations, or they don't even want to come to work because there are lots of things happening to them at the workplace that they are uncomfortable with. So it's important for you to, even every establishment should have some kind of whistleblower protection where I feel safe if I report that I'm uncomfortable with certain things that are happening in my workplace. It's also important to note that generally, so once we know the internal protection mechanisms, it is important, first things first, even if you feel that your human resources department or whatever internal legal protection mechanisms have been put in place in your organizations are not adequate, it's important for you to use them as a first point of complaint. Because we've seen clients who would say, I don't trust the human resources department. So they would want to consider external legal protection mechanisms. Use the internal ones, because in law, as we have come to find out, and most establishments understand, that it is important for you to show that you have brought this, whatever complaint is paramount, to the knowing of the organization. You can't just go out there without informing them within the organization that this is the situation of things. So if you find out that the internal protection mechanisms are not adequate, then you can explore external protection mechanisms. And such external protection mechanisms would be, in this instance, sometimes we have in criminal cases, because I mentioned that sexual harassment is a criminal offense. You have the Nigerian police force, because remember that I said at the beginning that we're referencing Nigeria as the jurisdiction in point. The Nigerian police force, if we also have all labor law matters in Nigeria are generally governed by the National Industrial Court. So if you get to a point where you find out that the police is doing nothing about it, you said it internally, then you have a right to escalate it by taking out representative actions to the National Industrial Court, because that's the court that has jurisdiction over workplace issues. It's also important to state that it has been recognized that trauma, because many people look at abuse in the workplace just as maybe sexual or physical. The law actually recognizes trauma as some kind of challenge in the workplace that workers, employees are faced on a daily basis. Because sometimes you have employers that are unbearable, they're breathing down your neck, they're shouting at you, they're breathing down your neck in such a way that it's affecting your health negatively. It's important to note that the Employee Compensation Act recognizes some instances of trauma, but for this trauma to be adequately established, you need to have visited a reputable medical organization. And in Nigeria, um, hospital, health facility, as it were, in Nigeria, what we recognize is a government establishment. So be aware that you're not just going to say, I spoke to my doctor and my doctor says I'm depressed or I have trauma. If you have evidences of high blood pressure records on a regular, like if you joined that organization in 2015, for instance, and prior to 2015, you did not have instances of high blood pressure, for instance, and in then 2015, 16, your health records show that you have recorded instances of high blood pressure, and you have had instances where trauma can be linked to that work environment, you can actually be compensated. But it's important, documentation is very important. The law cannot act on hearsay, the law cannot act on your beliefs or your ideology. The law acts on evidence. So it's important that you have your health records. Unfortunately, many of us don't even keep tabs of our health records. Many of us don't even, if you ask on this call or in this live, how many people even know what their current BP is? They don't know. So you might not even be able to recognize that, okay, my blood pressure is rising because I just started this job, or my blood pressure started rising when I moved into a new department. These are things that in more organized climates, they have constant records of those things, and they can tell you, when I started in this organization, I didn't have this constant headache I have. But it's important to make sure you consult a medic, because it's not just physical, it's not just when your boss slaps you. There are times when a boss will talk down on you to the point that you now have palpitations. Those palpitations have a negative influence on your heart, but it should be established in, because I've had an instance with a client where she started recording unimaginable blood pressure rates, and the doctor had to tell her, I think you need to leave this office, or I think you need to tell your employer that you need some time off. Because that doctor had recognized, he had seen a causal link between the workspace and her health. And unfortunately, many of us don't realize it, but we clock in sometimes at 8 o'clock into the office, and some of us don't leave the office until like 5, 6. That's quite a number of hours to be in a place where you are experiencing trauma, where you are experiencing um, triggers, things that would trigger you mentally. And it's important to make sure that these triggers are documented. But unfortunately, many people don't document it because it just seems like, oh, I'm at work, it's part of the stress of work. And we understand that work is stressful, but there are other triggers that should be noticed. So it's important for people to know how to seek redress in these instances. I know I had mentioned that there are internal protection mechanisms and there are external protection mechanisms. Everybody should try and know what internal protection mechanisms are available. Some of these internal protection mechanisms have been documented in your organization policy documents, in your employee handbooks. But unfortunately, many of us don't read our employee handbooks. Many of us don't know what opportunities are there for us for redress if certain things are not going the way we wanted them to go in the workplace. I think I'm grateful that there are some organizations that are now tracking, human resource organizations that are now tracking workplace, um, the environment in the workplace. So you have instances where certain organizations have been commended for being good places to work. So first things first, I know that where many of us are looking for money, the hustle is real. We all want to put bread on the table, but it's important to make inquiries about an establishment before you go and work in that place. I always tell, as a lawyer, I tell junior lawyers, ask about that organization when you want to go and work there, because the truth is somebody has worked there before. Except they're creating an entirely new role for you, somebody was in that role before. So it's important for you to ask, does anybody know anybody who has worked in this organization? Because there are some organizations that unfortunately they have gained a reputation for having people who sexually harass people at the top level. And it's unfortunate, but some people go into these establishments and don't even know that these are the things. And you might even have had options at the point of being interviewed. You might have had two job offers, and then you pick one over the other because you feel, oh, this place pays me more. But you could have pick the better place to work if you had just asked a few people. I remember once in my career, I had the opportunity to work in a particular establishment, and some of the questions that were being asked at the interview level, I was a bit uncomfortable with. They didn't border on my professional competence. There were lots of questions about my private life, about how I lived my private life. So I wasn't too comfortable with some of those questions. And a mentor of mine asked me, you know somebody who must have worked in this organization. So a simple Google search, I went, I looked at their team, and I found one or two people. And one person who was working there told me that the organization was
Okay, so while we wait for Daring to return, I'm not sure what happened to her network, but I know she will be back very soon. This has been so informative. This has been enlightening. How has it been for us? Can you drop it in the chat? What has stood out for you so far? This has been so good, so good. I mean, even the little things that we ignore, such as offer letters. For example, she mentioned something about for 6 months you are entitled to ask for your offer letter if you've worked in an establishment for 6 months. In fact, before you even start working, you have to ask for your offer letter, and don't just ask, read it. Like, read it. Read your offer letter. I've gained so much already. I've gained so much. So tell me what has stood out for you so far. I'm going to be reading the comments while we wait for Barrister Daring to return. I'm going to be reading the chats, right? I remember when I had an issue when I was working, that my employer was owing me salaries for 4 months. And when I was asking for my salary, they made it look like I was being difficult or I was demanding for too much, right? And I insisted on getting my salary. And interestingly, I was the only one that was paid. The other staff, I think they were owed for way longer because they couldn't talk, they couldn't speak, right? So nobody's saying that you should be rude. I'm sure you heard Barrister Jerin say again and again that you don't have to go and shout at your employer, right? You just need to be informed. The reason for this training is to equip you with information so that you are able to know what to do and what not to do, basically, right? It has been so informative. Like, let me say some of the things that I jotted down while I wait for you to drop yours in the chat. Okay, I can see Grace's comments. She says, nice one. Keep health records before and during work and make good inquiries. Absolutely. About the company. Very important. I love when she said that trauma is actually recognized as abuse. Yes, in the workplace, trauma is recognized as abuse. She said it's not just physical or sexual or anything like that. Trauma is actually recognized, right, in the law. She said, keep records of your health. How was your blood pressure before you started? What has happened to you as a result of working in that organization, positively and negatively? Keep track of it. And she said something very profound, which I already know as a gender-based violence advocate. I tell it to my survivors, the victims, people that reach out to us in our foundation, that you need to go to a government-owned hospital. Every time you have to report any abuse in anything, they don't recognize any other hospital. They don't recognize private hospitals. They recognize government hospitals. And she actually reiterated it here. So I'm going to reiterate it. Go to a government. Welcome back, Darren. I'm just trying to do a recap so they can continue. So she mentioned going to a government hospital is very, very important. Don't go to just anyhow hospital and say, oh, I know this person. They can assume that, oh, it's someone you know. But if you go to a government hospital, that can be brought forward to the court, right? We're hoping that it will not get to that stage where you have to go to the court and take your employer to the court. But this is you just being equipped. She said, do background checks. This has been so good. She said, do background checks on the organization that you work in or that you intend to work in. It might look good on the outside, but it might not be good for you, right? So do those background checks. She said, read your offer letter. She said something very profound, that we just take the letter and go straight to salary. And like, okay, how much are they paying me? Okay, let's just go there. Actually read the offer letter and don't just focus on salaries. And then she said something again, read your employee handbook. That sometimes there are already information in the handbook that are already for your own benefits from the organization, that but you're not aware. So how do you even know what your rights are and what exists for you legally as protection? So I'm just going to leave you to continue, Darren. I wanted to just come in and do a recap when you went off the stream. So yeah, you can take it away.
Thank you so much for the recap, Penny, for me. Thank you everyone for listening. Apologies, I had to go off. A call came in. So there's something called right to fair treatment in the workplace, but many of us suffer from this because of the limited number of jobs, or don't understand the power of this right, because there are limited number of jobs. We're just saying, oh, I just need to put bread on the table for my organization, for my family, for myself. I have plans. I want to develop myself. This is an opportunity for me to grow. Your employer cannot and should not mete out punishments that are beyond what is contractually recommended. So we've had instances where people have been slapped even in a formal environment. Nobody has a right to physically assault you in an office. These are things we all sometimes take our eyes off because we're looking for money and we feel, okay, I'll take whatever they throw at me because I need this money. But these are the little things that build up. And the truth is that in an organization, the way you carry yourself, if you're aware of your rights, the way you carry yourself, they will kind of know that this person seems to know her rights. And that's especially for us women. We sometimes cow ourselves. We sometimes, even though we know, we sometimes overlook certain things. We sometimes, because we just want to hit that promotion, but unfortunately they know these things. They know that this person is going to accept whatever we throw at her. So it's important for you to know your rights and know that, look, I may have been wrong. So even if you did something wrong, I may have been wrong, but I disagree with this punishment that I have been given. Let it be written. Sometimes if you're even sending an email, you let it be documented, and you'll be surprised that if you create those boundaries, the organization will, even if they're not professional in the way they met out punishments, they would realize that this person knows her rights and is not going to take that rubbish. This happens sometimes in establishments that are maybe one man driven. The person just thinks, I can slap you and nothing will happen. You have no right to slap me. I'm a grown adult. You have no right to lay your hands on me. You see people, they will just hit you on the back because you've done something wrong. You let them know that this is unacceptable. I'm not saying resign, but sometimes you even want to have those workplace conversations. Some of us are not used to having those awkward conversations, but it's important we have them. I remember there was a time in I was in a senior management role at the time, and I realized that the younger ones were not able to have those conversations. And I started asking them, why can't you have these conversations? He said, because they will shout at us. So sometimes we don't want to have those awkward conversations, but it's important for us to have those conversations because we need to let them know, I know my rights and I know what I am doing. I may be wrong. I may have done something wrong. I may have been late in submitting a report that I was supposed to submit, but you have no right to shout at me. You have no right to slap me. You don't have to say it in a manner that seems like you're rude. You may actually just say, sorry, I'm really sorry. I take responsibility for what I've done, but I really don't feel like this punishment was appropriate. I really don't feel like we should be talking about abuse here. Sometimes we even let people know that we know that these things are punishable because they feel we don't know. That's why sometimes they let these things happen. And the truth of the matter is it just takes one person to show an organization that I know my rights, and other people would reap the fruit of that awareness. So I don't know why many times, unfortunately, we cover things up. We cover these things up and let them, maybe it's partly because sometimes we don't know our rights, and sometimes we believe that legal remedies are expensive. You hear people saying that I really don't want to go to court, I don't have money to go to court. But the truth of the matter is, I keep saying it, there are lawyers out there who will take up some of these briefs without necessarily paying an arm and a leg. There some maybe not, they might not entirely fall under pro bono work, but there are lawyers who will say, okay, let's take it up. We know that we can get compensation of maybe 10, 15 million from your organization. We'll see you through this case. It's called contingency billing. We'll see you through this case. And at the end of the case, if we're successful, and that will give them enough, the lawyers enough push to make sure that they are successful in the case, to say, okay, if we're successful, at the end of the day, we'll take 10% or 20% of whatever we were able to get as compensation. And you know what? If you read the number of compensation cases at the National Industrial Court, there are so many of them where people have gone to the NIC and have actually got justice. Because the good thing is that the National Industrial Court is a specialized court that deals entirely with labor matters. So I know some of you are still saying, oh, I don't want to have to go to court. Nobody in my entire family has gone to court. There are other methods. I talked about the internal ones. I also talked about negotiation. Sometimes you can just get your lawyer to write a letter. But you know what? At that point, a lawyer is writing a letter, you are the verge, or in fact, you would have lost a job. Which goes to the point I just want to say to everybody here, no job should be your life. Because I remember my late mom used to tell me that if you die on a job, the moment you die, they'll probably send one or two people to commiserate with your family, but there's a replacement waiting. So no job should be your life. We've seen CEOs retire. We've even seen founders of establishments, founder of Apple, Steve Jobs, he died and Apple is still here. People are still selling iPhones till tomorrow. Even people who founded organizations, people who felt like they were the dream of the organization. We've seen them go. We've seen them go into new other projects, not necessarily dead. They've even seen them have a rebirth and gone into new projects, and the businesses still continue. So no organization should be your lifeline. I always tell people that the moment you enter an organization, ask yourself, how far can I go here? And secondly, ask yourself, what is my exit plan? The moment you enter, have an exit plan. And for some of you saying is easy, is some of you may think is not easy, but remember, at the end of the day, health is wealth. If you're dealing with chronic health issues, at the end of the day, no matter how much you make in an organization, you can't use money to buy wellness. Our wellness is important. And I know there might be a few employers on this call. Please help us to make the workplace more habitable. Help us to make the workplace a decent place for people to live in, to work in. Let there be channels for disseminating grievances. You know, sometimes we even look at workplace abuse as between a senior officer or a senior employer, senior management and junior management. Sometimes even within colleagues. So let's examine ourselves. The next person's right stops where my rights starts, where my rights end. Even as in an organization, how do I want to be treated? The same way you want to be treated is how you should try and treat others. Because even some of us that are here trying to learn from this, sometimes even in our houses, how do we treat our domestics? Do we treat them as they are human beings? So if you treat your domestic bad, how do you expect to go to the office and expect that your boss will respect you? Sometimes these things come around. We think it doesn't matter, but it does matter. If you treat others right, there's a likelihood that as you go along in life, you will be treated rightly as well. So another thing that I want to say is that I said it initially that some of us don't read our employment letters. For beyond that, we should all learn negotiation skills, be able to negotiate. Sometimes we take whatever is thrown at us because we don't have that power, or we feel we don't have that power to negotiate. If you have an employment letter, you should be able to point out that, sorry, I'm not happy with this clause. You might take the job, but let them know that you're not happy with this clause. When you're having your appraisal, okay, these are the things that are stopping me. You know, when we have those appraisals and they say, what are the threats in this organization? Feel free to tell them, these are my threats in the organization. Let it be documented. There are certain times when you won't tell them during an appraisal that this is your threat and they don't document it. You send an email back when you get that appraisal report that I noticed that the threats I mentioned were not documented, so that you can print those mail trails if anything happens and you need to negotiate. So last, I'd like to close by saying I can't really give a I can't really we don't have enough time to go through everything, but I want to tell you that there are laws guiding workplace wellness and workplace safeguarding and protecting you as an employee in the workplace. The Constitution is one of them, the criminal law is one of them, the Violence Against People's Prohibition Act is one of them, the Employee Compensation Act is one of them. It's important for us to document and keep proper records of workplace incidences. Any document you sign can be used against you. So before you sign those documents at work, those policy documents, read them. And if you are at the point where you are also a policymaker, please try and include policies that are favorable to human beings that work with you. Thank you so much. I hope I've been able to go through this. And I always want to say, have a lawyer you can talk to. It might not be a lawyer that you pay on a retainer or anything, or just have a lawyer in your space. I always call it your lawyer friend. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope I have been, if there are any questions, I'll be ready to answer them.
Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. This has been so good. I'm a bit short of words because I feel like everyone needs to know the things that we just heard. I wish I knew all this before I started working because a lot of things have happened. I'm looking at the trajectory of my career as you're speaking, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this happened, that happened. I've worked in places where I wasn't even given an ID card because it wasn't, like you said, sometimes these are one man companies, right? Where things just happen. People are trying to find their feet in their organizations that they set up, but a lot of times the employees suffer for it. And sometimes salaries are owed and there is no explanation. There is nothing like, oh, please, we're trying to work on it. Sometimes employers make it look like they're doing you a favor for working for them. And a lot of people have lost themselves while working. And looking at my life, I've done blue collars, I've done white collars, I've done almost all kinds of jobs. I've seen it all. So listening to you, I'm just saying this is gold. This is beautiful. You mentioned the constitution. A lot of times we don't even bother reading these things. We don't even, we're just like, oh, I beg, it's not my business, you know. And like she said, have a lawyer friend, at least have one. This is like information that everybody knows in the world. You should have a lawyer friend. This is not even about workplace trauma and resilient leadership initiative anymore. This is about have a lawyer friend because anything can happen. You need to call them, send them a text. This just happened. What can I do? This just happened. How can I approach this? Right? And she mentioned the industrial court. Were you aware of it before now? Please tell me what you have gained from this session. I would like to hear from you. What have you gained from this session? I'm going to be reading the comments. Okay, I see a probationary period of 6 months in a workplace. Is it standard? So that's a question for you, Darren. A
Yes,
probationary
can
period.
you hear me? It's actually standard. It's recognized by law, so it's standard. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, beautiful. There was another comment earlier about if someone
Somebody was
slaps
talking
you.
about we should talk about how some of these policies are not followed. Yes, I know that that happens in certain organizations, that these policies are not followed. I totally understand that. And that's why I try to balance it by talking to the employers as well, because we have to not just let the employees know their rights. We have to let employers know. And I remember I worked in an organization where when we joined there were no policies, and we pushed for it because we kept saying it. You can't keep quiet about certain things. So when we all kept pushing for it, it got to a stage where they had to let some of these things happen. Rome was not built in a day. You wouldn't expect them to follow because some of these policies are uncomfortable to them. I'm paying somebody for 3 months maternity leave when the person is not coming to work. Why do I have to do that and things like that? But we need to keep having these conversations. I understand that some offices have those policies written down, but they don't follow them. But if any policy that is written is not implemented and it affects you adversely, that is a breach of your rights. but many of us don't understand. We just say, oh, they are not following the policies, and they've not, especially this effect that people have, like, oh, maybe you join an organization, some people have been there for 5 years and they've just been doing things anyhow. So when you come and you feel like things that are not supposed to be done this way, they convince you by saying, you don't know, we've been doing this thing for 5 years. Don't fall prey for that. Anything that you know has not been done right, just document it. Even if you're not leaving or you're not going to make a case out of it yet, their cup will get full, because establishments like that don't follow policies, their cup will be gradually getting full, and you can actually sue on it. And that's why it's important for us to know our rights. You can actually, at the end of it, when you eventually decide to leave, you can now write a whole long letter, get your lawyer write a whole long letter. And that's why I said documentation is important. I wasn't given this, I wasn't done, this was not done to me, I wasn't allowed to have this. You will put it, and it is policy number this in the policy document, reference page this. And you'll find out that if you now get a lawyer to engage them, they will not want to go to court. So they'll be talking about negotiation. What is the way out? How do we do this? You can tell them, look, we'll embarrass your organization. And nobody wants any kind of negative publicity. Because you see people sometimes they put out things on social media when they get frustrated. Well, that's not the way. Just keep documenting it, even if you know that, okay, I don't have an exit plan yet. I'm not ready to leave, but I can see you, and you keep documenting it. And I remember one advice my dad used to give me: there's certain things that shouldn't be on your office computer. So you have a laptop that is at home, you don't take it anywhere, you have a file that you keep at home, document those things in a file. And depending on how serious they are, you might need somebody to have a copy so that somebody else knows. Because many times we keep quiet. It's only us that knows these things that are happening. Let other people know.
Oh wow. Thank you so much for that. I hear you emphasizing evidence. I hear you emphasizing evidence. And I tell people, gather evidence. Gather evidence. There is nothing like too much evidence, right?
Mhm.
Get a Google Drive, get a drive, download Google Drive. Whatever happens that you feel like this is something that is what we're not saying you should be walking around being so evidence conscious. Let me document this, let me document this, let me document. No, but we're saying when something happens, it's not explanation. It's not them say I said, the person now said. Document evidence and send it to a Google Drive. Send it to an email
Mm,
address. Put that email address. It might be a secret email address or something where your archives, where you keep
mm,
evidence. I say this a lot to people. Document evidence. Evidence terminates arguments. It's not speaking English. Document evidence. I have a question for you. The first one is on intimidation. The second one is on for business owners, for CEOs, right? And we have questions in the chat. I'm going to highlight those questions, but this is my question. When someone is being intimidated in the workplace, what does the law say about that? And by intimidation, I'm not talking about they blow you, they slap you, they tell you you can't, get out of this office. But sometimes it gets to that point where they're like, get out, you're stupid, you're this, you cannot work. Like you said something about people that have worked for years in an organization, right? When they begin to intimidate the person who just joined and it begins to impact on their health, on their performance, what can that person do? What does the law say? That's the first question. The second question, as a CEO, a founder, a business owner, what are the things you need to put in place to protect you legally as a CEO and your employees as well? What are the things that need to be done for such a person to be equipped with, to be on the good side of the law, both as a CEO and to be able to protect their employees as well?
Okay, thank you, Anifome, for this question. So, in terms of intimidation, expressly, we don't have any provision of our law that talks about that intimidation thing, and that's why, unfortunately, especially because we come from an environment, we live in an environment where we've been grown to respect and be in awe of people. Many of us fall victim of this kind of intimidation, and people think they can easily talk down on people. So I really cannot give you a legal answer in the sense of it for that intimidation, but I would just say on a practical level that if you're in an organization where you're being intimidated, where they are being talked down at, number your days. I know it sounds like I'm just saying this, and I know there are not too many jobs out there, but as I said earlier, your health is more important than your well-being, your mental state of mind is more important than money, honestly. Because legally, there's no, unfortunately, the way our laws are structured, there's no protection. And that's why everything I've been saying is evidential. Like, if even if you do recordings of somebody just shouting down on you, if there's no policy against shouting at people in the workplace, you're not going to have any kind of redress for it, unfortunately. So, but the second question about what employers can do if you're a small business or whatever, not every business can afford to have an HR department. So, what I usually advise people is just have, there are lots of prototypes online. Make sure you give everybody their employment letter, basic things, because it's contractual. So you don't want somebody telling you, oh, you owe me this when you don't owe that person that. Make sure you have that. Employment, when you employ the person, give them an employment contract. Try and put together a handbook of your policies so people know where they stand. All these things can be pulled out. We have HR sites online that you can pull these things out of. One thing that a small business can do is to have a whistleblower policy, maybe a blind email where you can just send emails to if you have any problems within the organization. It's important. Then, depending on what area of business you are, even if you're a small business, there are certain obligations in terms of tax returns, in terms of healthcare, in terms of depending on the sector you deal with, there are certain number and the number of employees you have. So once you've reached a certain number of employees, you're expected to make sure they have the pension scheme. You're expected to make sure they have the health insurance policies and things like that. So I cannot just give a generic answer, but I hope this has been able to cover it in totality. Then I think I saw a question here that was saying, what if you work in a small organization where there's no HR, no handbook, no real policies, one man business, and dealing with fear of being jobless or to resign due to a lot of personal pressures? So we've all been there at different stages in our lives, and that's why I said it from the beginning. But many of us fail to understand it. Have an exit plan. Tell yourself, I'm going to work here for 2 years because I want to learn. Why are you there? Maybe you want to learn. Maybe you want to make enough money, gather enough money. No, it's a period of learning. It's a period of denial. But have that exit plan, because if you don't have an exit plan, you will be dehumanized because you would not be able to see beyond that organization. I want whoever this person who wrote it there to say, that person who started that business that person is running that you work for, that person did not come from, was not born with that business. That person grew to a stage to be able to start that business. You yourself can start a business no matter how small. So always have an exit plan in whatever organization you are in. I remember somebody told me the reason she resigned from an organization she resigned from was because she was working on the sixth floor and there was no lift. And she told herself at a point, the moment they moved into that new building, she said to herself, I give myself 3 months. Within 3 months, I'm going to leave. And she said she knows the effect that had on her health. How can you put people in an organization, you're on the sixth floor and there's no lift, and you expect them to go up and down every day? So it's important for you to have an exit plan. You cannot change your employer in his or her entirety. Anybody who wants to run a one-man business where there's no employment contract, no workplace, no HR, fine. But you know that I'm not going to stay there for the rest of my life. And if they're incriminating things that they're doing to you, as I've said, document them and get a lawyer on it, and you'll be surprised how some of these people who intimidate people and shout down on people, when they are confronted with the evidence, they'll cower, especially when they realize that other people are in the know. There's a lawyer, because sometimes they do these things where they believe, this person cannot even afford a lawyer. This person won't be able to pay to go to court. I can do anything with the person. The person doesn't even know her rights. So thank you, Leave Again movement, for this.
Wow, my God, this that was so good. I'm sure the person that asked that question already has the answers. There's this question, please, can I know how to deal with physical assault coming from a junior staff being supervised who is not teachable or believes she has been a staff for years before my appointment as a supervisor.
So I think this would be more of an HR thing than a legal thing. So I don't really know how you'd want to deal with that. But there's an element of assault which is criminal. Physical assault is criminal, so you might want to threaten the person with reporting them to the police in a quiet conversation, especially because that's a junior staff. You tell them, look, physical assault is criminal. Do you realize it? Because some people don't even realize it. Just say it's not just a slap. Did not just hit the person, but you might also want to ask from an HR perspective, especially in the sense of mentorship, leadership, what leadership tools you can use to manage such a person. Because I find out that some people you can discuss with people and they would understand. There are certain people that there are different leadership approaches that would better engage them. So I can't really answer that in its entirety, but I've told you there's assault involved. You can let the person know that this is criminal. Do you want us to report you to the police? The person might take a step back, but also contact an HR personnel for this as well.
My God, this has been so good. This has been, I don't know, do we have questions? Please, if you have questions, we're just going to give a few minutes to Barrister Darren before she leaves. If you have any question, this is the time to ask, because trust me, my head is just full. Like, we need to take these conversations to places that need it. We need to take these conversations further. A lot of people do not even know that these things exist. In fact, I myself, who prides myself in proper knowledge of the law, I've heard things today that I'm like, are you for real? I never knew that this existed. I only just felt, oh, there is this Nigerian labor organization, the whole pensions thing, different things. Based on what has happened to me, sometimes I research to know what I can do. But today I've sort of gotten like a holistic overview of legal protection, employee rights, and I'm so grateful to you for that. Thank you so, so much for sharing. I'm really sure that anybody who listens to this, who watches this, who comes across this, will be able to get knowledge and know better so they can do better, not just for the employees, but also for the employers. You literally covered everything. Does anyone have any questions? Do you have any questions in the chat? Someone is saying have an exit plan. Yes, I really loved what you said when you said nobody should take any organization as their lifeline. Like, I'm going to die here, because this thing you're saying is really something that is not just even for workplace. As a GBV advocate, as someone who has worked with women, run shelter, and just really provided support for women who are going through abuse, I can tell you that predators, people that pry on their victims, they take advantage of desperation. They take advantage of it a lot. When they see that, oh, you feel like this is my last bus stop, I don't have anybody, this person is my all in all, they begin to take advantage of that. So I'm happy to hear that even in the workplace and even in organizations, we should not have that mindset that this is my lifeline, this is where I'm going to die, because everything is transient. You have to reinvent yourself. You have to learn to move on and bounce back and have an exit plan when you get into an organization. That should not be at the top of your mind, but that should be in your arsenal, so that whatever happens, you are insured and you are protected. Thank you so, so much, Barrister Darren. Thank you for coming here and helping us understand workplace harm, helping us understand employee rights, helping us understand legal protection. This has been so, so good. Thank you very, very much
Thank
for
you for
coming on
having
board.
me. Have
You're
a
very
lovely
welcome.
afternoon.
You too. You too. Bye bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye. Yes, bye. Oh, wow. Oh, wow, wow, wow. This has been so, so, so good. I'm sure that many of us have gotten value from this. If you have joined, or if you're watching this as a replay, or if you come across this video, please know that you are valued. Know that nobody has a right to abuse you in life, in the workplace, or anywhere. But you also have to know yourself. You also have to value yourself. You also have to be so good at what you do that you are unable to be ignored. And being good at what you do does not mean being rude, being uncouth, or just being annoying or being a pain in your employer's neck because you're good at what you do. You have to respect yourself so that you are being respected. And just to give a summary of this from the things from my own point of view, read your employee handbook, read your offer letter, like read, find out the policies that exist in that workplace, understand what is this organization, what is happening here. What, even I as a parent, before I put my child in a school, I go and research the school. Don't just say because you're looking for a job anything goes. Have a standard, have what you stand for, have what you represent, have for your own self as a human being, right? Have something that you represent. Don't just be anything goes. Don't be that kind of person. Don't be that kind of person. Anything doesn't go. Anything doesn't go, please. Place some value on yourself. This has been very good. I remember when I was being owed salary. I always go back to that example because I just took my assertive self and went to the office of the person in charge to say, you're owing me salary and I need my money, right? And they were looking at me like, what boldness, what audacity, because other people did not have that kind of boldness. But I ended up getting my salary, right? So sometimes people are not even aware that you know your rights. And if you don't know your rights, it's going to show. You can actually demand for what is right for yourself. And if they can't give you that and you're losing yourself in that organization, please step out. Like our lawyer said, your life is more important, your health is more important. And please always document and go to a government accredited hospital, because only that will be permitted in the court of law. We're hoping it doesn't get to the court, but even if it does, like she said, you can actually get legal help. There are people that actually like this kind of matters and they're like, I'm going to take this up, right? Just be hopeful, be optimistic, and I wish you all the best and have a beautiful, beautiful day. Bye.